Hello and welcome back to the Go-Karts and Good Times YouTube channel. And good weather is finally getting more consistent, so it's time to get some progress done. My 1990 Mazda Miata, partially through the process of being turned into a Deathkart, or whatever you want to call it, still sits exactly as it did at the end of the last video. Here, I've actually reorganized the garage so I can work on it and so that it has a more permanent place to be set up on what you can see in front of me, jack stands. Some people may be a little bit surprised or confused by my decision to pull the engine now, but we have to take a look at what I have on hand and what state the car is in. As it currently sits, I have to work on the manifold and turbo plumbing, which is expensive, difficult, messy. It's a lot of cutting and welding to get all that stuff finished up, and the other garage is pretty occupied where I have enough power to do the welding I need to do. There's also the interior, which will need to be modified, to say the least, to fit the stock cluster and to get gauges and switches mounted in a way that I'm pleased with. And the last thing is rust repair. Most of the bad rust repair, or at least the structural rust repair, is taken care of, while that floor pan still has some work left to be done to it. The engine bay is the main area of rust repair I want to focus on now. Obviously, when I get the engine out, I'm going to paint it, and there are a couple problem areas, but for the most part, I don't have the stuff to complete the turbo setup, and interior touches are kind of a last minute thing and something that's subject to change with a cage and with other more structural modifications to the car. With all that being said, the car isn't being driven. It doesn't really need to run because most of the time it just sits anyways. And if I have the engine out on a stand, I can slowly replace things like old leaky gaskets, get the block cleaned up and painted, paint the valve cover, just do a bunch of little refreshing things that the engine needs before I turbo it and before I want to get it back into the car. Ideally, I'd want to get a head gasket, I'd want to get better head studs, stuff like that to support the turbocharging, but that's really not in the cards right now because those things are not exactly cheap, or at least not within what I consider the budget to be for this car, with the manual swap taking priority. And like I said, I'm not really driving the car, so progress on getting the turbo done isn't really at the forefront. All of that being said, I'm mostly going to do time lapses, and like I said in my Impreza engine pull video, it's kind of just disconnecting main systems, then working your way around, getting rid of all the accessories, electrical, vacuum, cooling, everything like that, until you're finally ready to get it out. I'm opting to pull the engine and the transmission out at the same time because they both need to come out, and it'll be easier with no front core support, radiator support, whatever you want to call it in the way. I can just slide it right out the front. So let's get this thing jacked up on jack stands and start getting stuff disconnected. It doesn't look much different, but now up front, I've got everything disconnected except for one final wiring loom, but vacuum lines, throttle cable, electrical plugs, fuel lines, all that are disconnected. So besides the transmission, it's almost ready to be pulled. I'm not going to worry about this one remaining wiring harness part yet because I think once I get the engine partially up, pulled out of the car, it'll be a lot easier to unplug things. But if I don't have enough space or length on that set of cables, then I'll have to get my little fingers in there and get it unplugged. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to trying to get the transmission undone, and then I can bring out the engine hoist. For getting this transmission out, I'll explain my steps in going forward with it. I've got this power plant frame, which goes from the transmission to the rear differential that I have to remove, and I have a shift linkage, which goes from the automatic shifter in the car. It's hard to see, but I think that rod there is part of it. I have to get way up under there and get that shifter taken out. And then I can slip out the drive shaft and get to actually pulling the engine and transmission together. to say I probably should have unplugged all the electrical stuff on the transmission while it was still in the car, but at least it's out. And now I can remove that automatic transmission and get it on a stand before I start taking off more stuff and cleaning up. Finally, the engine is out of my way and on a stand. Everything is a bit of a mess right now, so I'll probably spend the rest of the night cleaning, putting stuff away, and maybe stripping off small accessories I don't need, like the AC bracket or the power steering bracket, little things that need to get cleaned up and may or may not be in the way, especially for cleaning the block. And that leaves me with an automatic transmission. I can get $35 for core from the junkyard I got the manual from. I also have the power plant frame and the drive shaft that I won't be needing. But I think I'm going to try and list it on Facebook Marketplace and see if I can get a couple bucks for it, at least more than the $35 the junkyard would give me. There may be a very small market for these automatics, but I don't think it's going to have any real value, and I might have a bit of trouble selling it locally, especially quickly. Let me know in the comments what you think, but by the time this video goes up, it'll probably be gone anyways. After quite the pile of cat litter, the ground is now free of ATF, or at least acceptably free of ATF, and the engine now on the stand is tucked away until I can come back and revisit it. Like I said, the car's in a spot now where I can just begin taking parts off of it or working on different areas of the build without having to go and clear out another garage or be in the way as far as space goes. So this is a huge step in the right direction, and now I have a bunch of easy things ahead of me before I get into the more difficult stuff involved with the turbo swap, the manual swap, and other aspects of the build. Again, I've been talking way too much, but as it sits, I can now come and work on it for a couple of hours and do little tiny things here and there to progress the build instead of having it piled up with junk, with things in the way, with barriers to doing work. And I know these are just excuses, but now with this layer of difficulty removed, I can get down to work, and this is where I'm going to leave it for tonight. In usual fashion, the weather has turned, so that's just about where I'm going to leave things. This wasn't the craziest video in the world. It might even seem like I took a step backwards here, but this will really help me make small progress here and there rather than waiting for some big part or to order something or get something else done to move progress of the build. In the next video, I'd like to get that thing more disassembled and start cleaning out all the crud that's been building up on this car for its entire life. Hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully there will be more to come on the progress of this build. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you'd like, comment, or even subscribe to the channel. And for now, this is me signing off.